You're not bad with money. Your shopping list is untrained. And there is a very specific difference between those two things. Being bad with money means the problem is you. An untrained shopping list means the problem is 7 categories of purchase you've never once questioned, because nobody ever told you. Japan quietly skips almost all of them. 7 things. None of them dramatic. None of them this stop buying coffee advice you've heard 1,000 times and ignored. Small, repeated purchases that Americans treat as completely normal, and that a huge number of Japanese households simply never developed the habit of buying at all, not out of poverty, but out of a completely different relationship with what a purchase is actually for. Stay with me until number 7, because number 7 is the one that explains why the other 6 aren't really about money at all. They're about a single underlying principle that, once you understand it, changes how you look at your own shopping cart permanently. But first, number 3 is the one that's going to surprise you, because it's not a product at all. It's an entire category of products built to solve a problem most Japanese households never created in the first place. Let's begin. Most of us think about spending the wrong way. We treat it as a discipline problem, spend less, save more, cut the obvious luxuries, and assume that's where the leak is. Then the credit card statement arrives anyway, full of small, reasonable-seeming purchases that never once felt like the problem in the moment. Japan doesn't approach spending this way. In Japan, a huge share of financial discipline isn't willpower at all, it's structural. Entire categories of purchase that Americans buy reflexively, repeatedly, without a second thought, simply never became habits in Japanese households in the first place, for reasons rooted in space, culture, and a philosophy toward objects that's completely different from the acquire first, organize later default most Western consumer habits are built on. There is a concept behind this called monai, a sense of regret over waste, applied not just to food but to money, objects, and space itself. And there is the broader philosophy of Dan-sheri, refusing what you don't need, discarding what's excess, separating yourself from the attachment to owning more. 7 categories. Each one a purchase most Americans have made this year without a second thought. Each one something a huge number of Japanese households simply never buy at all. Let's go through every single one. You've probably never thought twice about grabbing a case of bottled water at the store. It feels like a basic household staple, not a purchase decision at all. That's exactly the problem, it stopped being a decision, and unquestioned recurring purchases are where money quietly disappears fastest. Here's the actual cost. A household buying even a modest case of bottled water weekly, at typical retail prices, spends somewhere in the range of several $100s a year on something functionally identical to tap water in the vast majority of American municipalities, where tap water is tested more frequently and regulated more strictly than bottled water actually is. This isn't a one-time purchase. It's a recurring line item that compounds silently, year after year, never once questioned because it feels like a basic necessity rather than an optional expense. Japan has extremely high tap water quality standards nationwide, and the cultural default is a reusable bottle, refilled from the tap, carried daily, not because bottled water isn't available, but because the habit of buying it as a household default simply never took hold the way it did in American consumer culture, where bottled water marketing spent decades successfully reframing tap water as somehow inferior. The shift, the same hydration, from a reusable bottle instead of a recurring case purchase, saves a household several $100s a year, money that was never a discipline problem, just an unquestioned default nobody had ever actually looked at. That is number 1. Now, number 2 is where this gets interesting, because it's a purchase most people don't even register as a purchase, it just refills itself in the cart automatically. This sounds almost too small to matter. Multiplied across a year, across a household, it isn't small at all. Here's the actual math. An average American household goes through a substantial number of paper towel rolls annually, for many households, well over 100, at a cost that, totaled across a year, frequently exceeds what most people would guess if asked to estimate it cold. It's a purchase so routine it rarely gets mentally tallied as an actual expense, the same way bottled water doesn't, which is precisely why it survives budget reviews that catch far more obvious, occasional splurges instead. Japanese households more commonly default to reusable cloths, for kitchen cleanup, for spills, for general household wiping, washed and reused rather than thrown away after a single use. This isn't purely a financial calculation, it connects directly to monai, where discarding something after one use, when a reusable alternative exists, registers as a small but real waste, repeated dozens of times a week. The shift, a stack of reusable cloths, washed and reused for months or years, replaces a recurring purchase that, totaled honestly across 12 months, is often larger than people expect, money spent on convenience that a cloth and a washing machine accomplish for a fraction of the cost. That is number 2. Now, number 3, the category I mentioned at the start that isn't a single product at all. Slow down here, because I know what you're thinking, that storage bins and organizing systems are a solution, not a wasteful purchase. Here's why: in a huge number of Japanese households, that entire category barely exists in the first place. Here's the actual pattern. The American organizing and storage products industry is a multi-billion-dollar category: bins, shelving units, closet systems, and increasingly, paid self-storage units for possessions that don't even fit in the home anymore. All of it is built on a single unspoken assumption, that the amount of stuff a household owns is fixed, and the solution to too much stuff is better containers for it, rather than less stuff. Japanese living spaces, particularly in urban areas, are frequently smaller than typical American homes, which creates a structural constraint most American homes don't have. There's often nowhere to put an organizing system even if you wanted one. Combined with the philosophy of Dan-sherry, actively discarding what isn't needed, the entire category of buy a product to manage your excess belongings gets bypassed at the root. The excess belongings themselves are the thing addressed, not contained. The shift, money spent on bins, shelving, and storage rental to house things you don't actually use, is money spent solving the wrong problem. The fix isn't a better container, it's fewer things needing one, and that fix costs nothing at all. That is number 3. Now, number 4, and this one is going to challenge how you think about your closet specifically. Fast fashion in the US is built around extremely short trend cycles, new items released almost weekly, priced low enough to buy impulsively, worn a handful of times, then replaced by the next cycle. The average American purchases a striking number of new clothing items per year, many of which see limited actual wear before being discarded or forgotten in a closet. Here's the actual cost structure. Each individual fast fashion item is cheap, which is exactly what makes the total damage invisible. No single purchase feels significant, but a year of small, frequent, trend-driven clothing purchases adds up to a substantial recurring expense that rarely gets tracked as a single category, because it's spread across dozens of small transactions rather than one obvious line item. A more common pattern in Japanese wardrobes leans toward fewer, higher quality pieces, chosen for durability and versatility rather than trend following, worn for years rather than a season. This connects to a broader cultural respect for monozukuri, the craft and quality of how things are made, where an item's value is tied to how well it's made and how long it lasts, not how recently it was purchased. The shift, the same total number of wears across a year, delivered by fewer, well-made pieces instead of a constant rotation of cheap trend items, costs less overall while producing a wardrobe that doesn't need replacing every few months. That is number 4. Now, number 5, and this is the biggest single number on this entire list. American car culture defaults heavily toward large sedans, trucks, and SUVs, even for households whose actual daily driving consists of short local trips. The vehicle itself is often one of the largest recurring expenses in a household budget: purchase price, financing, insurance, fuel, and maintenance, all scaled to a vehicle size that daily use rarely demands. Here's the structural reason Japan looks different here. A significant share of Japanese vehicle owners drive K-cars, a legally defined category of small, fuel-efficient vehicles with lower purchase prices, lower taxes, and lower insurance costs than standard-sized cars. This isn't purely a cultural preference, it's reinforced by policy, including a legal requirement in many areas to prove access to a parking space before registering a standard-sized vehicle, which structurally discourages oversized car ownership from the start. The result is a vehicle category built around what daily transportation actually requires, rather than what feels aspirational or accommodates an occasional, rare need for extra space. The shift, a vehicle sized to actual daily use instead of occasional, rare capacity needs, can represent a meaningfully lower total cost of ownership over the life of the car, thousands of dollars that most American households never realize they're spending on capacity they use only a handful of times a year. That is number 5. Now, number 6, and this one is about a specific kind of purchase most people make out of a feeling of caution rather than actual need. American retail has built an entire add-on category around extended warranties, sold at the point of sale on everything from electronics to appliances, often priced disproportionately to the actual likelihood of needing a repair. Layered on top of that is a broader pattern of buying appliances designed for a shorter usable lifespan, replaced every few years rather than repaired and maintained. Here's the actual cost dynamic. Extended warranties are, on average, a poor value proposition for the buyer, profitable enough for retailers that they're aggressively marketed at checkout, priced well above the statistical average cost of the repairs they'd actually cover. Combined with appliances built toward planned shorter lifespans, this creates a recurring replacement cycle. Buy, pay for a warranty out of anxiety about the purchase, replace again in a few years, repeat. Japanese consumer culture, again connected to monozukuri, leans toward purchasing fewer, higher quality appliances and tools up front, maintained and repaired rather than replaced at the first sign of an issue, with a cultural respect for repair work and craftsmanship that keeps well-made goods in service for far longer than their cheaper, warranty-dependent equivalents. The shift, the total cost of one well-made appliance, maintained and repaired over a decade, is frequently lower than the total cost of 3 cheaper appliances plus their extended warranties over that same decade, even though the first sticker price looked more expensive. That is number 6. Now, number 7, the one I told you at the very start, explains why the other 6 aren't really separate categories at all. This last one isn't a product category. It's the compounding layer most people never notice, the purchases that only exist because of purchases that came before them. Here's what I mean. A garage organization system exists to manage a garage full of things that didn't need to be bought in the first place. A bigger house, or a paid storage unit, exists to hold the overflow from years of fast fashion and impulse purchases that a smaller, more deliberate wardrobe would never have generated. A second, larger vehicle sometimes gets purchased specifically to haul purchases home from stores selling things a household didn't structurally need to buy as often to begin with. Each of the 6 categories above doesn't just cost money directly, it generates a second layer of spending purely to manage its own consequences, and that second layer is almost never counted as part of the original purchase's real cost. This is the actual through line behind Ma and I, and it's bigger than any single item on this list. It's not really about avoiding bottled water, or paper towels, or fast fashion individually. It's an underlying orientation toward purchases in general, treating every acquisition as something with an ongoing cost, not just a one-time transaction, and asking, before buying, whether an item is being bought to solve an actual need or simply to manage the consequences of a previous unnecessary purchase. The shift, you don't need to evaluate 6 separate spending categories individually for the rest of your life. You need one underlying question, asked before almost any purchase: is this solving a real need, or managing the fallout of stuff I didn't need to buy in the first place? And that single question quietly resolves most of the other 6 on its own. That is number 7. Here is everything in one breath. Skip the recurring bottled water and refill instead. Skip the bulk paper towels and reach for a reusable cloth. Skip the storage products and address the excess directly instead of containing it. Buy fewer, better clothing pieces instead of chasing a constant trend cycle. Size your vehicle to actual daily use, not rare occasional capacity. Buy quality upfront and repair it, rather than replacing cheap goods on a cycle. And before any purchase, ask whether it's solving a real need or managing the fallout of one you didn't need to make. 7 categories. None of them require earning more money. None of them require a formal budget you have to maintain forever. Every single one begins with your next trip to the store, the next time you reach for something out of habit rather than actual need. You're not bad with money because you lack discipline. You've never been handed these 7 categories, while American retail spent decades quietly training you to treat every one of them as a basic, unquestionable necessity instead of an optional recurring expense. Now you have them. So here's what I want from you before you close this video. Right now, tell me in the comments which one of these 7 your household buys the most without ever questioning it. Is it number 1, is there a case of bottled water in your kitchen right now that you never actually decided to buy, it just reorders itself? Is it number 4, is your closet full of things worn once or twice and forgotten? Is it number 5, is your car sized for a hauling trip you take twice a year, driven solo to the grocery store the other 363 days? Tell me the number, 1 through 7, in the comments right now, because naming it is the first step, and someone reading your comment might recognize their own shopping cart in it and finally decide to change it. If this changed how you think about spending, send it to the one person you know who's always saying they don't understand where their paycheck goes. They're 7 quiet categories away from finally seeing exactly where it's been going the whole time. I'll see you in the next one.